Hi everybody, this week we're going to talk about Saturn, and as you all know, Saturn's considered to be the big baddie in terms of astrology, and quite often he's called the malefic or the greater malefic, particularly in classical astrology. So what I thought we'd do today is just have a quick look at the mythology of Saturn. We'll have a look at the astronomy. We'll have a look at some of the key words and key concepts, and we'll put it all together and see just how bad Saturn actually is. So in mythology, the Romans borrowed the story of Saturn from the Greeks, and in the Greek mythology, Saturn is Kronos. Kronos is the son of Uranus and Gaia, and Uranus and Gaia are the king and queen of the mythological world, and Saturn sets about undermining the kingdom of Uranus and dethrones, eventually with his brothers and sisters, the Titans. He manages to dethrone Uranus and set himself up as king of the mythological world. Which is all very well and good, but the problem is that Saturn doesn't want to lose his reign at all. He's married to Rhea, and between them they have many children. I believe that there's 6. So Saturn has this thing that he's absolutely petrified of being dethroned by one of his children. So he goes about devouring them, which obviously gives Saturn his terrible reputation for reign and terror. And each of his children he devours until it comes to his last child, which is Zeus. Now, Zeus is actually Jupiter, the god that we all love in astrology. And Rhea actually tries to save Zeus from the devouring Saturn, and gives Saturn a stone in replacement for devouring Zeus, which is why Jupiter is, in some respects, the lucky planet. So there you go. There's a small mythological story of Saturn for you. So in order for us to get to grips with Saturn, it's very useful to look at the astronomy. And the reason that I want to do this is because Saturn, in its astronomical description, can really help us understand what Saturn means in the chart. So we're just going to go through some of the facts about Saturn. So it's a very heavy planet made of iron, nickel and rock. It's a yellow gaseous planet with gaseous layers, and my research has informed me that it's made with 12 rings, and these are composed of ice, rocky debris and dust. Sort of quite interesting elements for Saturn: gaseous, ice, debris and dust. It's a very slow moving planet, so it revolves around the Sun over 29.46 years, a quarter of that 7.36, and half of that is 14.73 years. So as you can hear, it's moving very slowly around the signs of our chart, and it's the second largest planet, and it's 95 times greater in size than the Earth. Discovered in 1610 with the first telescope, and it's the 6th planet from the Sun. So some of those things are really vital in helping us understand what Saturn means in terms of its implication for our chart, etc. So on this next slide, I just want us to have a look at some of the placements for Saturn in the chart and some of the indications of where Saturn rules, etc. So we're just going to go through these quite quickly. Now, as you would know, Saturn is a malefic, and that means that generally where he appears from a more classical perspective, he's bad news. But that isn't exactly the case, and we'll be talking about that in more detail in a moment. But nonetheless, Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn and Aquarius. He's also the lord of the 10th and the 11th houses. He's exalted in Libra, especially on the 21st degrees, and he's in detriment in Pisces and Leo. And accordingly, at the end of this slide, as you'll see, he's in fall in Aries. Now, the thing that I want to bring your attention to is that Saturn doesn't always bring bad news. And as you can see by the 10th and the 11th houses and his rulership there, this is important because, you know, Saturn brings us that focus, the attention to detail that we need in order to really strengthen our lives and to give us some sense of purpose, perhaps you could say, some sense of discipline, and to help us out. So that's just a few things to say there. In a moment, on the next slide, we're going to go into much more detail about all of this. So often it's very useful to think about Saturn in terms of the archetypes that might arise. And archetypes are quite useful because they're a universal way of understanding patterns of human behavior, and that's why astrologers often use archetypes to describe the planets and their influences on the way we interact with one another. So very common archetypes for Saturn would be things like the teacher, the headmaster, the boss, the wise man. You might like to think about him as being the tyrant or the disciplinarian. He's hard to please. And all of these things arise from the various qualities of Saturn that we'll be talking about in a moment. And this picture that we have actually helps us to really understand the way Saturn moves in our chart. And I'd like you to just spend a bit of time looking at the words that I'm going to present that describe Saturn to you and think about these archetypes. I think you'll find them very useful. So as you look at the keywords that apply to Saturn, I think the most important thing for you to think about is the fact that many of the words have to do with time and precision of time, boundaries, farewells, separation. It's all to do with how, in the minutiae, time affects us, how being disciplined and spending time on something provides a craft. And it all has to do really with how long it takes for Saturn to orbit around the Sun. And because it's the slow planet, it's bringing that slow, meticulous energy into our existence. It's laborious, it makes things happen, retards things so that they don't go as quickly as we'd like them to go. And in that way, Saturn is the teacher. It teaches us to be forbearing, to have patience, to be stable, to be determined, to push through boundaries. All of these things are to do with Saturn. So if you look at the archetypes that I've brought to you today, you'll see that it's all about discipline. It's all about having to deal with a tyrant that's pushing something onto you that you don't actually want. At the beginning of the video, you will have noticed that we were using the Greek name for Saturn. Saturn is the Roman name, and Kronos is the Greek name. And the Greek name lends itself for those words like chronological, even chronic, which has a time element to it. Chronicle, to put things in order. All of these words with chron indicate a Saturn-like quality, a Cronus-like quality. So I just want to leave you with those ideas about Saturn today. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that you found this video informative. It's part of a series that I hope to do on the planets. So please feel free to subscribe if you'd like to hear more videos, and leave comments if you wish. It's been great having you, and I look forward to next time. Goodbye.